Okay, good. Let's get right into this. So a lot of people are wondering about why would I do a video on something the Social Security Administration has to lie to you about. Now, Social Security Administration is basically a group that administers all of your retirement, disability, SSI benefits, etc. And when they go ahead and do one particular item, they are required to lie. There's other things that can create a situation where they have to lie, but this they are required to require under the FOIA exemptions, under the Privacy Act exemptions, etc. So let's talk about it real quick. There's a document that essentially they create when they go to investigate you. And the document is the ROI. The ROI is the document that is created by the CDI units. The CDI units are the investigators who basically go and follow you around or potentially go and interact with those people who interact with you. As a result, they are under certain particular rules, such as 5 USC section 552 or 20 CFR section 401.85, required to go ahead and not give you information about the existence of an ROI. So, what usually happens if you wanted to collect your shadow document at the SSA, the document where they go and investigate you and create a report and then send it off to DDS and basically Office of Inspector General, OIG, what they do is they go ahead and they look at the system and the document is flagged. Why is it flagged? Sometimes it ends up where the local field office can see it, where DDS can see it, things like that. When that happens, usually if you call in to obtain a copy of your ROI report, how they were investigating you, what they were doing, what will usually happen is they will make up a lie. They will say there is no ROI, or they're unable to compile all the information right now. Or a very common thing that I usually hear related to this is the person that you called in to talk to will go on, a momentary, break where they'll go talk to their manager, and then they'll come back and they'll say, okay, well, we're going to send you whatever we have. When they do this, I have a little bit of allergies right now. When they do this, they basically will never send off your ROI. Instead, what they'll usually send you is a copy of a CDR report or a copy of the CEME report. The CEME report is basically where they go ahead and send you to their doctor, and their doctor creates a report. But that's not what you were looking for. What you were looking for was a copy of the ROI, where they were actually following you around, seeing what was going on, etc. As a result of this, people get really pissed off. They get really angry because they feel like they deserve that document of how they were investigating them. But let me explain something real quick. The Office of Inspector General, by and through the CDI unit, does not want you to have access to this. Here are the reasons why they're legally required to lie to you and not give you that document. The rules are that they don't have to give you, and they won't give you that document if it potentially could interfere with an investigation. So if they're investigating you, right, and they're looking into what's going on with you, and they want the opportunity to do that further in the future, that is reason enough to be required to lie to you about the ROI report when receiving your benefits. Number two, they do not want to reveal certain confidential sources. Okay, so here's one of the things. Sometimes people expect to remain confidential. And, basically their names have to be blacked out in the report so they can't be seen. However, some of the sources don't care about being confidential or not. And when this happens, it's an interesting situation because you will see their name all over that report and they're totally fine with it. Ex spouses are usually okay with this because everybody knows who the problem is. One thing I would like to point out to you guys, if you're ever in a situation where you have an ex spouse and you're looking to cause drama and cause problems, if you cause them problems, it's not going to fix anything in your life. I guarantee it. I guarantee it 100%. If you cause them problems, it's not going to fix anything in your life. I guarantee it. Number three, I mean, you might feel better. You might feel a lot better, but it's not going to fix anything. Reason number three, they do not want to disclose law enforcement techniques. Now, there are certain techniques that I've not disclosed about what they do to basically investigate you guys. Certain ones are obvious. They pop up in briefs all the time, like how they basically follow you for the day on the CE day when you're supposed to go to their doctor. That's open. It's out there. It's been out there a very long time. And they do it because they know what time you're going to leave the house. They know what time, things are going to happen, etc. And they do it so that they set it up so that in the very beginning of the day, you have to go to the SSA doctor, and then they get to follow you around with all the other functions you do. So when you go to the grocery store later, you got it. They're going to go ahead and watch you walk up and down those aisles and take video footage of it, etc. So, what a lot of people do is a basic, trial tactic to go ahead and fight that is they'll only go to the CEME, the medical doctor on behalf of the SSA that day, and then do nothing else for usually like 2 weeks. But, that one's out there. Everybody knows about that. However, there are particular types of law enforcement techniques that I have not released because I'm a little worried that it's not currently out there. And I've learned them through sources that have not had published information. And I try to stick with just what's published because, they have to have their fair shot. You have to have your fair shot. Okay. The next one, number 4, is endangering someone's safety. Now, a lot of you guys don't really think about this, but when a situation occurs where the ROI report creates an unsafe situation for somebody else, it's not always just the person who is basically making testimony against you that might be in danger because let's say they're investigating whether or not somebody has PTSD and mental impairments, and the person they're investigating is a disabled veteran. The disabled veteran, has been known, let's say, to go on Harley rides and go jet skiing or fishing or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is they're being investigated and they don't want certain names of people, for example, certain neighbors that they might have interviewed that might have or might not have thrown that person under the bus, or the person who originally made the complaint. They don't want that information out there because then that's endangering the life of the person who potentially might have to deal with a mentally unstable veteran who potentially could cause harm to somebody else. So once again, let me clarify, there are four main reasons that they are required to not release this document to you: interfere with an investigation, reveal confidential sources, disclose law enforcement techniques, or endanger somebody's safety. All right. So now you understand under the Privacy Act exemption why this is. And then, of course, 20 CFR 401.85. Now, I know what you're thinking. You'll get around that by using the FOIA exemption. However, there's a problem. FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, specifically exempts the ROI reports being given to you, specifically exempts it. Back in the day, if it was an ROI report that was done and it was used and it was over and they were able to black things out, cool. Sometimes people will be able to get them through that. I am seeing now that pretty much everybody is rejected from getting their ROI. So what that means is that even if you go ahead and try to submit, for example, some sort of SSA document or a FOIA request to, or even a request directly to, the Office of Inspector General, you are not likely to be able to obtain this because the FOIA requests and Privacy Act specifically restrict the SSA from disclosing this. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, how do I go ahead and obtain this? Pretty much the only way at this point to obtain it is to go ahead and either file suit against the federal government to try and obtain a copy because of something they did wrong that you want to go ahead and show and prove that it somehow interfered, with your ability to receive your benefits or whatever. So filing suit, or if there's a problem, right, and it's related to, and the evidence of this ROI is used against you as part of the adjudication, then your attorney will be able to go ahead and obtain the document. As you guys know me, Attorney Walter Hnot, Disability Resolution PA, the most viewed and subscribed to disability attorney in America. All right, now another thing real quick, I don't do traditional Medicare stuff. So real quick, here's the deal. If ... you have Medicare questions, go ahead and give them a call. I don't do a lot of Medicare questions. I don't do a lot of Medicare videos. It's not really my jam. Give them a call at Chapter, askchapter.org/disability right here. Again, free Medicare help. You do a call with them. They do a tune-up. Call is free, 339-2226. Now, here's the deal. And I think this is important, okay? When it comes to an expectation of having and submitting, a request to go ahead and obtain this, pretty much all of them are being denied at this point. You submit a FOIA. You could submit, the classic request form to the SSA. You could put a request on a 795, but for the most part, they're just denying them. So a lot of you will then come to the conclusion, well, hey, if I don't have it and I want it, how can I get it? And so really just filing suit against the SSA or potentially, basically, if the suit is coming against you, your attorney will be able to obtain a copy. Now, this is what I have noticed as a practicing disability attorney in the field, because you guys know I've owned my law firm, and in a total of 6 days, the law firm on the 27th of September will officially be 12 years old, which is a long time to own a law firm. It's a long time to own a law firm, especially I've owned it for that length of time before ever hitting 40. So what's odd and unique about me as a disability attorney, other than of course YouTube basically, paid me to hyper learn the system and deliver videos on it and learn all the little tiny, very dark and shadowy areas and corners of the law. So that's how I make these videos. I constantly learn new information, which forced me to kind of get ahead of the curve of everybody else that I can think of when it comes to knowing the system. But the bottom line is this: at the end of the day, what I usually see with these is that there will be a hearing set up. And if the attorney doesn't go ahead and request to see the ROI, they'll usually leave it out. But they will go ahead and reference it and the material in it in prior DDS, DDE reports. So the attorney has to go ahead and request it from the administrative law judge so that they put it into the file so that you can obtain it. Now, I've requested it from DDS before, and they haven't been able to hand it over. So it usually comes down to the ALJ actually being the one who hands it over. And that's because people at the SSA are like, when do we allow it? When do we not allow the release, etc. But the judge knows if the attorney requests it, they got to go ahead and put it in the file. Because if any part of the adjudication is related to the actions pertaining to it, then they've got to go ahead and put it in. Now, sometimes the judges will say, well, I don't think the adjudication is relevant to that. I do not add any significant weight to it. I still always request it. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, there's the potential of bias of an adjudication that had that in it. Because look, when you get a judge, the judge has read the report that basically the person was out there, with a U-Haul truck loading stuff into it. And yet at the same time, this is an individual who needs a wheelchair to be able to get around. No matter what, there's bias. No matter what, there's bias. So you have to be able to see what happened. What did they actually see? Who did they see? Was it actually the claimant? How far away is the camera? Did they use a telephoto lens? Were the recordings of the audio of the person? Did somebody walk up and see what was going on? Is this all third-party statements from somebody else who claimed that they saw this? What do we actually know has been used against the claimant? And so at the end of the day, it is imperative for the attorney to actually obtain this. But I need you to also understand this. There is a special division, once again, a special division, okay, within the SSA where they handle fraud-based adjudications, okay? And this special division has specially trained administrative law judges who only do these types of fraud claims. It's the cadre division. And so what you have to understand is that the cadre division, they do hearings a little bit differently. And the judges tend to be, they're, I guess the way I would put it is they've been around a bit. Okay. They've had specialty training. They know what's going on. It's a specialty group of administrative law judges. Now, with that said, I have seen these go the right way. I have seen these go the wrong way. Okay. Judges do not tend to prefer, from what I've seen, claims where the claimant clearly could do certain things and then obviously had medical evidence to show that they couldn't do it. One of the tough parts about that is it then shows that the doctors used to add weight to the evidence of you complaining and saying you couldn't do this, this, or that. It decreases the weight of the testimony of those medical examiners, the experts, because then all of a sudden the doctors are saying, well, the claimant couldn't do this, but then they have video footage of you doing it. And one of the big things you kind of have to keep in mind with this is that at the end of the day, the SSA is going through a Trump era. During the Trump era, there tends to be a lot of push for essentially a reduction of certain things and increase of efficiency with other things. Why? So Donald Trump's entire rally call was this whole, get rid of fraud, get rid of waste, push, make it efficient, make it more like a privatized organization. That is not what the government is used to. So the government is used to extra workers, People aren't stressed too hard. There's enough time to go ahead and usually complete things and, move the ball forward. Now, the SSA tends to always have a backlog. It's got a backlog right now, had a backlog before. However, in the next video, we're going to talk about what's going on with that backlog. And that's not a statistic that's going to help Trump. And remember, I give videos where I show both sides. I'm an independent. I'm going to show you the crap that the Democrats do. I'm going to show you the crap that the Republicans do. Now, going back to this whole situation, I need you to understand something, okay? An ROI is merely a report about your abilities to do stuff. So you have to understand when a lot of people are like, well, what did they catch? What did I do? What do they know? You have to understand that at the end of the day, the report is purely trying to figure out what your capacity to do something actually is. And it is based off of what impairments you have complained about and what impairments you have used in your adjudications previously. So if it's a mental impairment, they're going to be looking for certain things. You're talking and chatting it up with your neighbors. You're able to do a side job where you're able to complete certain functions that require you to, meet with the general public and work a deal and finalize things, maybe negotiate a sale price. The point that I'm getting at here is that the mental side is a different type of evidence set that they usually shoot for. There's a crossover, but the starting point is a little bit different. The physical side is an interesting one because a lot of you guys are worried about, what did they see you do? And the truth of the matter is, most disabled people improve once they stop working. And I guess one of the big things that I would have to say to most, disabled individuals when it comes to this, at the end of the day, the SSA is looking for improvement. And in the Trump era, improvement means, basically you lose your benefits. Why does this happen? So Social Security benefits, specifically for disability benefits, not retirement, but does include supplemental security income disability benefits. These disability benefits are based off of a 100% or 0% ruling. Okay. It's not like VA benefits where you have a different percentage for how bad they think you are. And if you've got a bunch of medium or lower percentages combined, you can get a TDIU. That's where they all add up to you being unable to work. And then you're found disabled at the 100%, but you can't work. Whereas, which is kind of like a vocational allowance with the SSA and element 5 approval. Whereas with the veterans as well, sometimes they get a P&T. A P&T is essentially, at the end of the day, where a person is completely disabled as a result of permanent total impairment. They can't do stuff. It's just not there, right? The total add up is your 100%, or one of them is just in and of itself 100%, right? And when you get that situation, that means, basically at the end of the day, that a person is so messed up that they really couldn't do anything because there's just too many impairments combined. So in SSA terms, that's kind of like an element 3 approval, with a little bit of element 4 in there. Okay. Element 3 is listing level approval. That's where all of your listings, all of your impairments combined, aren't really what they're looking at. They're looking at one impairment that meets a threshold for severity, a listing level approval. But remember, those are really bad. Like an amputee has to have both their hands, both their feet, or an entire leg and half their hip missing. So like most of you that are on disability benefits are not listing level people. And, the funny thing about it is when I talk to people about how severe they are, it's always a female. Not saying anything negative, it's just always a female who will say to me, "I don't understand it. I'm this bad. I'm worse than the neighbor down the street. I'm definitely worse than them. I definitely know I'm really bad, yada, yada, yada." And sometimes I'll get some male ones, but it's almost always a female. And then I'll say to them, "Okay, well, let's talk about essentially what the judge is looking at when the judge is going to approve somebody, because some days they're going to approve 2 out of 5 claims, some days they're going to approve 3 out of 5 claims." And when you go through the reality that some people meet listing level, they're spending, let's say 2 weeks of every 4 to 5 months inside a behavioral institute, right? And then you ask them, "Hey, when was the last time you were, inpatient at a mental facility since your main impairments are mental?" And they're like, "Well, I never have." "Well, who are you treating with?" "Well, my PCP." And your PCP is the one giving direction and mental medication related to this. Oh, yes. And he's very successful. Right off the bat, I know that that claimant is somebody who 15 years ago could be found disabled, maybe even 10, 12 years ago, but not nowadays, not even close nowadays, because those individuals do not meet the severity of the modern culture of acceptance and approval of the SSA. So, what I tend to look at when I interview people when it comes to how bad they actually are, a lot of you hear me always asking the two phrases. Okay. If you have a mental impairment, when was the last time you were inpatient? If you have a physical impairment, when was the last time you were at the emergency room? Why? The SSA really likes crisis medical treatment. Okay. And one of the big things that they look at, and I can't go too in depth in this because we're going to get into investigative things that I don't think are available in the general public websites or even in case law. One of the things that they really like to look at is essentially crisis medical treatment. Now, a lot of you that were found disabled way back in the day, you don't really treat your impairments like a job where you have to get repetitive, continuous medical treatment. You have to go in for crisis medical treatment every once in a while because not saying that you just make it up, but saying that as a result of your severity of impairments, you do. A lot of people were found disabled 15, 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Nowadays, you have your thing, you're as stabilized as you're going to be, and it is what it is. And there's that comfort there. What I think is going to happen in the not too distant future is that people are going to be going through more of the 8-step sequential process. And why the old rules will still apply, the culture of the SSA, meaning the aggressiveness at denying people, is going to increase significantly with the assistance of, for example, artificial intelligence. That is why I think if somebody was found disabled, let's say 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I think there should be a rule kind of like the VA benefits. The VA has a 10-year rule and a 20-year rule. Here, I'll read to you what they are real quick. Let me pull them up real quick. What is the VA compensation 10-year and 20-year rule? All right, VA's 10-year rule. I'm just going to read to you the yada yada. Purposes safeguard veterans' longstanding service-connected disability. VA cannot entirely revoke the service connection for a disability that has been established for at least 10 years. The VA can still sever a service connection if it's determined the original rating was based on fraud or clear and unmistakable error. Okay, that's the 10-year rule. Okay, 20-year rule. Protect a veteran's disability rating from being lowered after it has remained the same for 2 decades or more. Okay. If a veteran's combined disability evaluation has been continuous for 20 or more years, it cannot be reduced even if the disability improves or VA laws change. So one is, can they go ahead and entirely revoke one of the service connection, percentages for an impairment? That's the 10-year rule. 20-year rule for the VA benefits is that they basically are not allowed to reduce, right, percentage that you have at that point. There are no protections like this in the realm of SSA other than they have to use the original rules and regulations when they found you disabled when adjudicating your claim. The inherent problem with that set of design is, okay, sure, they can't change the rules that you were found disabled under, but they can show that you had improvement medically from your original documents. And then that improvement is what triggers the review. And then when it triggers the review, you go through it hat in hand as a disabled person, just like all the other disabled people who had a review a year later, 3 years later from their initial finding. Because when they go through that, how they change the culture of approving or denying somebody matters. So let's take an example. Let's just do an example real quick. SSA listings. Everybody tends to like the mental ones, so I'll just do that. I can do a different one if you guys want, but let me just do the mental ones for now. Let's say, oh no, actually no, we'll do the 12.05. That's perfect. Okay, so let's say 12.05, intellectual disorder. Okay, let's read through it real quick, but let me go to, here we go. Okay, so part B, significant sub-average general intellectual functioning evidenced by A or B. A full-scale IQ score of 70 or below on an individually administered standardized test of general intelligence, or a full-scale IQ score of 71 to 75 accompanied by a verbal or performance IQ score of 70 or below on an individually administered standardized test of general intelligence and significant deficits in this is like your part C section understand, remember, and apply information, interact with others, concentrate, persist, and maintain pace, adapt and manage oneself, yada yada. So that rule has pretty much stayed the same for a long, long time. Actually, let me see. When was the last time the SSA changed listing 12.05? Let's see what it comes up with. It's been decades. Okay. Oh no! Oh wait, hold on. Last change of listing to a rule is part of a larger revision of the mental disorders list, which became effective January 17, 2017. The final rule was published. Blah blah blah. Let's see what the key change was. I don't remember it changing in that though. Hold on. The rule for evaluating IQ is blah 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 blah. 70 below can meet the grade previously claimant's lowest score on a test was used. Oh yeah. Okay. So the rule for evaluating IQ scores was updated. For example, under the new rule, a full scale IQ score of 70 or below can meet the criteria. Previously, a claimant's lowest score on a test was used. Okay. Onset before age 20, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. Removal of the capsule definition. The previous version included a summary capsule definition of intellectual disability that was removed from the new listing. All right. So, but remember, it's basically, yeah, and that is important because it's like which test is actually all right. So that's a good point. So there's an example where the question then becomes for an intellectual impairment, IQ test, intellectual quotient situation. The question then becomes, okay, if you were found disabled 10 years ago, right? If you're found disabled 10 years ago and they had to use the lowest test, right? They'd have to use the lowest test nowadays. But if you're found disabled after 2017, they're just going to use the tests that are actually coming through. So what this comes down to is that will save people who were found disabled back in the day because it was a more liberal definition to allow them to receive disability benefits. So if anybody ever tells you like, "Oh, I'm amazing and I'm perfect and I got my disability benefits and it was so easy for me. I don't understand why it's so hard for you," and blah 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 blah. That's because it was way easier for them back in the day because not only was the definition usually easier, but also the culture was much more accepting of an allowance. It was much more accepting of a fully favorable or partially favorable. However, if you go ahead and show improvement, meaning they do an updated standardized test, and all of a sudden you're now at the, let's say, 78 IQ score or an 81 IQ score, that's not going to be great because they're going to want to send you to another one and then pick from that and see how you do. And what happens is if you come through and it says, well, that person didn't try very hard, or it appeared that they were trying to, kind of like beat the exam and do extra poorly, then what happens is that can be a situation called fraud. And if fraud occurs and they're looking at the situation where you're trying to play or game the system, then they can open up an investigation into you. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is that as the SSA continues to change its culture, it is going to become very hungry for any types of improvement in your medical records going forward. What does this mean? You have to kind of go ahead and understand that at the end of the day, if you have improvements, you need to be aware of them, that you need to go ahead and make sure you get alternative medical treatment to deal with them. One of the best types of medical treatment that you can get if you have an improvement on your record is, of course, crisis medical treatment. Because if somebody has improvement and then all of a sudden they're very, very bad, so bad that the treatment they had before, the medication they had before, the therapy they had before isn't doing it, and they got to go to the hospital or behavioral center or sanatorium, that is direct proof that while they may have had some gains, they had massive losses as well. So my point to you is this video is about why people have a difficult time now getting an ROI. And it's because, once again, the three functions of this entire thing. Number one, when it comes down to it, it's basically they don't want you to know what they're doing because you're interfering with an investigation. And they don't like that because if they want to catch you, they're going to do what they can to try and catch you. And if you try and know something about it, that's interfering with their ability to go ahead and figure out stuff about you. Number two is that they can reveal confidential sources or endanger somebody's safety by releasing names in it that they don't want to do. Okay. Number three, they can disclose law enforcement techniques as a part of it. So, one thing I'd like you to keep in mind as we kind of talk about the final details on this video is that it's a small percent of the population that is actually investigated, but that small percentage of the population is still a massive, massive number. Actually, hold on. Let me give you the number. How many CDR OIG reviews were started in, let's just do 2024. They're not going to have 2025, obviously, but let's see if we can get 2024. Let's see what it came out to. Okay, defense contract audit issue. Let's see, OJ reviews 20 not available. All right, let's try 2023. It's still probably too soon, although we could probably pull it from one of the recent publishings. No official government entity or office inspector exists with specific names. What did I spell something? Hold on, CDR OIG. Let's see what we got here. Hold on. What? How many CDR OIG or CDI? What is good with? I don't know. Maybe Google's not going to be able to give me this. I'll have to pull it from their actual report. All right. Well, whatever. I'll pull that another time. But the bottom line is, the percentage of people, the amount of reports that they get of people not being disabled or working when they're retired and not paying full taxes, the amount of reports is still a chunky number. And you have to keep in mind the SSA is very proud of the fact that when it comes to these CDI units, they save a lot of money, basically, by getting these benefits back. And as a result, they use it to fund the entire investigation process. So at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind the main thing that protects you. They're not going to be really looking at you too much unless they think fraud is going on during the 9-month trial work period or the 3-month extended eligibility period. And after that point, if you still keep working, right, there's going to be interest. However, if you go into the ticket to work program, they're not going to be doing CDRs unless they think there's fraud. Because basically there's a bar on doing CDRs because the whole point is they want you to work. They want you to try hard over a 5-year ticket to work program period. So that very likely going forward, you're going to successfully get off of benefits. Now, why is this important? The SSA would prefer you not to take a check, right? Because at the end of the day, the trust funds are in trouble. Now, the SSA also would prefer that you get the correct amount at the correct time, right? What you're due at the correct time. But obviously, the culture of the SSA keeps getting harder and harder and harder to be found disabled. If you ever get a chance to look up, for example, Bender and Bender, there's a really interesting timeline of how they mass advertised, got bought out by some financial group, and basically couldn't afford their mass advertising costs because the SSA kind of closed their doors a bit with approving people, and the financial system that they use to make the money, show that they made the money, and then get people approved, and then use it to go ahead and bankroll mass advertising. Because remember, you couldn't go through a TV commercial back in the day, right? A commercial break without Bender and Bender popping up from time to time. Like that's just Bender and Bender constantly nonstop. They had a cowboy hat and they were going to use it. So the reality of the whole situation is, the SSA during that 2012, 2013, 2014 period really ended the golden period of disability for disability attorneys because they just weren't approving as many claims. So one of the things you have to keep in mind, there are stylistic approaches to making it look like you're improving, is a reduction in the types of medications that you're using, right? Reducing the amount that you actually have. Small changes here and there, not a big deal. Big changes, big deal. YYZZ, thank you for the 99-cent donation. Super appreciate it. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Very nice. So one of the things you have to kind of keep in mind with this is that another thing that kind of triggers stuff is when you basically have in your medical record that you are showing improvement and you have now new abilities to go ahead and be able to complete certain things. As a result of that, that can be very damning. And the groups that tend to have to, answer to insurance companies, right? They tend to be the ones who are like, yeah, we've achieved this, we've approved this, we've gotten this going. She can now do this, and this. Wow, aren't we awesome? Let's go ahead and set her up on the next scheduled appointment. So, my foot just hit the desk. So the point that I'm getting at with you is this: certain types of improvements they're going to be looking for. It is really important that you as a disabled person going through, especially the next 4 years with Trump, well, 3 years, it's important that you actually try Because a lot of you, just to be fair, you don't know what the hell's in your medical records. You just assume everything's fine. You don't know what your doctor's actually saying. You just kind of like, you're whatever. It's fine. It's going to be great. I've had this forever. I think it would be very important for you to go ahead and start giving a shit. Why? The thing that keeps you alive, the benefit payment you receive, if you start looking at it more like a job to upkeep it, you will get to have that benefit for a very long time, very likely. Most of you don't. Most of you live in the I've had it, nothing's going to happen, everything's fine, blah, 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 blah. That's the same kind of level of mental state that the SSA employees were in. Didn't go so well for them. Did not go so well for them. Okay. And I mean, they just came out with a new article. Frank Bisignano basically went to New Jersey to go ahead and see how new artificial intelligence and automation functions were massively helping an office that did not have a lot of employees. And, basically now he's ramping up all this AI search capability pertaining to your record. So understanding that your record is in a situation where if you don't go ahead and try to make sure that you manage it, then you are setting yourself up for failure. Now, there's a counter situation going on with that. Many of you are like, well, screw it. The check's not worth much anyways. I get it. But one thing you kind of have to remember is that there aren't a lot of jobs like back in the day when you got on disability benefits. So remember how like the boomers, the companies kind of like sent jobs for making stuff, getting raw material stuff, like all that stuff was sent overseas. And so all we had in this country for the past 20 years was like service-oriented jobs, right? Well, now those service-oriented jobs aren't needed as much because people can't afford as much because of Bidenomics, right? I mean, add COVID in there, depending on where you stand politically. I mean, it's just, and also depend, like if you're backing it, if you're like COVID's the real reason, maybe take an economics class, maybe take an economics class. So at the end of the day, I don't mean it's a mean thing. I just mean like, generally educate yourself on how economics work. You might be surprised at what you've been voting for. You might be very surprised. So at the end of the day, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that if you have one of these reports, right, that comes back from your doctor and it says you're getting better, you have options. You can go find another doctor. You can ask your doctor to go ahead and change it. You can, if you're experiencing really big problems, go seek crisis medical treatment, emergency room, behavioral center, overnight stuff. You have options, okay? But if you don't make plans for those options, it's going to get much scarier for you in the future. What do I mean? Having a list of 3 to 4 other doctors that you could potentially switch to, not a bad idea. Having a list of where you could get crisis medical treatment, hospitals, emergency rooms, behavioral centers, whatever. Not a bad idea. So here's where I think things are going. We are seeing that they're going to be doing in the not too distant future a big cut when it comes to food stamps. And as a result of that, we're also hearing that there's going to be some dramatic changes to Social Security. We don't know what they are yet, but there's a buzz going on. We know that realistically, they're saying 2033, the trust funds for retirement are likely going to run out. And you're going to get like 20 to 22 to 23% less per month for your retirement check. Now, because they got the fertility rate wrong on their calculations, realistically, just to be fair, 2031, 2032, more likely. Now, if you look at the current map of who's president, who's going to be president, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032. The next president is going to be dealing with essentially a meltdown with the SSA and Social Security benefits as we know them. So, what is an extremely relevant topic that everybody's afraid to talk about? Social Security benefits. Is it odd to you that politicians are so quiet on such an important topic? It should be. In fact, the only time they've really been bringing it up is during election time, where they have a list of all of the restrictions they put in 1983, and how they are repealing those restrictions to get you to vote for them. The Social Security Fairness Act was one of those. Ultimately, I think what you need to know, but first, before we go into that, please remember to like and subscribe. A lot of people never hit the like button, and then other people don't get to see this video. Likes are crucial for people actually seeing this video. One of the things that I hope you kind of keep in mind with this whole situation is that you are the captain of your own ship, right? You are the captain of your disability benefits. You are. Even if you have a payee, you have to do what little you can to make sure the boat goes in the right direction. Now, I know when you guys hear like victim, you think of like somebody with a different skin color or the LGBTQ plus community, things like that. What's odd is that the true victims, there's United States citizens, are the disabled and the retired because they're a fragile class. You may have noticed that the Republicans weren't really smart enough to figure out that if they wanted to counter the argument of victimhood that is constantly proposed and projected by the Democrats, that they would have to actually bring up who the true victims are: people who are disabled and people who are retired. Because the disabled can't work at the functional level of people who are not disabled, right? Is if you got a different colored skin, it's not going to affect, you like somebody who's got a spinal, viral trauma, whatever. Okay. The true individuals who are victims are the disabled. How much do the Democrats and Republicans spend creating bills for the true victims, the retired and the disabled, the widows, right? Stuff like that. They don't. They don't. So here's the deal. I believe in the future, people are going to care more about Social Security benefits because the working class doesn't make enough money to pay the full FICA taxes, which is your 12.4% plus Medicare, right? So what happens is you're going to be seeing the middle class gang up against the retired and the disabled because they won't be able to afford the retired and the disabled. The other problem is that artificial intelligence is going to significantly reduce the amount of people that are needed for work. So when I tell you you're the captain of your own ship, what I'm really saying to you is if you F it up now, your ability to get benefits back over the next 3 years or into the future are extremely low. You should study the 8-step sequential process, learn what the elemental requirements of your particular impairments are. You should know that. But I do know this: most people who got their benefits 15 years ago have no clue. And that's because those people will walk up to you straight into your face and say, well, you must not be that disabled if you didn't get it. It was easy for me. I didn't need an attorney. I didn't need this. They just approved me the first time around. There's this egotistical, disgusting, horrible throw up that they put out there. And it doesn't help future generations get disability benefits. It's just their thing of like, well, I'm better than you because of this. I'm more, and here's the disability, the token of victimhood. I'm a better victim than you. That's why they gave me disability benefits back in the day. No, because getting disability benefits 15 years ago was easy peasy. Ben and Jerry's ice cream mixed with all kinds of other types of ice cream, easy. Way easier. Nowadays, it's much harder. So, Joanne Harper, I practice in all states because it's federal law. It's federal Social Security disability benefits. I'm the most viewed, clicked on, subscribed to. I have claimants in all kinds of states that take questions in all kinds of states and all types of continents, too. A lot of claimants, a lot of VA people, Europe, Southeast China Sea, that kind of stuff. I've seen pictures of the veterans in like the Southeast or the South China Sea area. I didn't realize there were such beautiful places. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever like checked out some of the places where the veterans go and they have, wives over there or they have husbands over there. Oh man, it's cheap to live there and it's gorgeous over there. It's gorgeous. I mean, if a war broke out, I wouldn't want to be over there, obviously. Obviously, China's right there, but it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. All right. We've talked about a lot of stuff in this particular video. Final thoughts. It is not in the best interest of the SSA to have people getting access to their ROIs because you're going to learn about how they do it. And you're going to know how they followed you around. And you're going to know who they, basically interviewed. And you're going to know what those people said. And, remember, some people, you walk up to them and you say, "Hi, badge number, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to ask you some questions about this." And then some of those people flip up the middle, right? And say, "I don't talk to cops. I don't talk to sheriffs," right? That's what you all think and hope they'll do. But that's not what they usually do. Usually it takes a criminal or somebody with a criminal background to know, where the line is and to draw it quickly. Other people, they want to help the police. They want to help the sheriffs. Sure, they'll talk to the sheriffs about you. Sure, they'll tell them what you do when you're there. Sure, they'll tell them what you buy when you're there. Sure, they'll tell them how long you spend there. Sure, they'll tell them about your ability to reach up high and grab something. Sure, they'll tell them about the video footage they have of you tying your shoe. Sure. The point I'm getting at with this is that at the end of the day, I want you to know how this works because I want you to retain your benefits. Some of you believe this is like all fear mongering stuff, and I don't really care anymore. I get all kinds of threats from people. It doesn't really bother me anymore. If you are of the group of people where you think that all this information, information related to 5 USC section 552, subsection A, J, and K, or 20 CFR 401.85, or 5 USC 552, subsection B, if you're the type of person who doesn't want to know what it is, how it works, my experience related to it as somebody who's practiced disability law for my own firm for in 6 days, 12 years. And then remember, there's other firms that I worked for before I became an attorney. If you don't want to know, then you're just going to do your thing. And this is what I've really found that's interesting. People don't normally subscribe to me the first time they see me. They don't. They'll be like, "Screw that guy. I don't know about that. Screw that guy." I don't blame them. It is what it is. Scary stuff. Fred Gonzalez, thank you for the $1.99 donation. I super appreciate it. Let me put a heart there. Thank you, Walter. Happy law firm 12th anniversary. Thank you. I'm blown away that we're reaching 12 years. I'm also blown away that I've owned a law firm for I'll have owned it soon for 12 years, and I haven't hit 40 yet. It has been it's had its ups and downs. It's definitely had its ups and downs. I don't know how interested, I'll be in owning a law firm by the time I'm 50, unless I have, and that's the other thing too. There's a change going on with Social Security disability law that is really big. The change is that it no longer makes sense to take SSI claimants because no matter what you do, their monthly payment amount is not enough to pay for the services of a law firm to work on their claim and win the claim. No matter what you do. Like if you made them wait super long, you're still not making enough. So it's just it doesn't work anymore. Again, that was the whole Biden era stuff. You blame it on COVID, blame it on just go research economics. Just do me a favor, just look up some economic videos about like international trade, about US dollar, and how basically how it works, how banking works when they lend money. Just look it up. Just look it up. So the point that I'm getting at is it doesn't make sense to do SSI claims anymore. And what's happening is that law firms are fighting more and more for certain types of claimants, which are basically those who are essentially over 50 years old, who have severe impairments, and are going to follow direction. We'll get claimants sometimes where I'll talk to them and they are not capable of following direction. You'll tell them, "Okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, we'll work on this, then we'll take a review at that." And then 3 weeks later, they get nothing done. And that's fine. That's totally fine. If they're not able to go ahead and follow direction, it is what it is. Some law firms love that though. Like if you take a big box firm and you take a claimant that's like not willing to put in any effort, they love that. Those are their bread and butter. When they advertise Like, let us figure it out. Let us worry about it. Let us hang with it. Let us hold the file. Man, they love the people. They love the people who are like, okay, just let it happen. Because they'll let that claim go as long as it can to bread and butter as much of the back pay as they can. They love those claims. They love them. You know what I mean? It takes a lot longer to get to a hearing. They're fine with that. The point that oh wow. So okay, real quick, I got to do some big shout outs. And I don't see the hold on, let me see where it is. Okay, here we go. So I want to do a shout out to Lisa Boston. How we doing? How we doing? I've known her for a very long time through this channel. $49.99 donation. Thank you, thank you. Congrats on the 12 years, Walter. Thank you, thank you. I super appreciate it. Brett S with the $19.99 donation. Thank you, and put a heart there as well. Walter, born in 62, now 63. What happens if I live to 65 when my retirement age is 67? You'll stay on SSDI benefits until you hit 67, and then you'll automatically transfer over to retirement benefits. And the main rule change that will change everything for you is that you'll no longer be held to what's called SGA Element 1, which is substantial gainful activity. So if you earn over SGA, ain't nobody going to say anything or complain. If you earn a lot more, then they're going to go ahead and basically, start to tax, your retirement benefits in some way, fashion, or form over a certain amount. Although Trump just changed that rule, but there still is a taxation principle, and it depends on how much you're going to earn. But again, yes, Brett, thank you for the $19.99 donation. Auto transfer on SSDI benefits to retirement at 67. If you're on SSI benefits, then they should have actually switched you over to retirement benefits if you had enough quarters of coverage at 62. If you didn't have enough quarters of coverage, they'll just keep you on SSI benefits and continue going. And there's an old age retired SSI benefit as well at age 65. Okay. So when people are like, oh no, when people are like the elderly have no money, no, the elderly, people over 65 get an SSI check. They're impoverished. That's the impoverished retirement check. So here's kind of the bottom line, and I super thank you guys for your kind thoughts here. Here's the bottom line and what you need to know about ROIs. They're probably very likely to increase the amount of investigators they have, but they try to keep it at I would call it like a glass ceiling, because they don't want to spend too much on it and then not have as much benefits saved as a result of it. Do they have more, potential files on their desk to go ahead and review and investigate than they have people to go ahead and investigate it? Yes. They get a ton of things. They can't investigate all of them. They got to cherry pick. That's the reality. Are those who get investigated unlucky? There's a reason you're being investigated. Okay. Sometimes I think one of the best ways to put it when it comes to whether or not you're going to get the roll of the dice with being investigated is, what are you doing that can draw attention? And one of the things that people tend to forget about this is, it's what are you doing that can draw attention that somebody else might turn you in on? A lot of people used to live in the world where, like, if you were in a neighborhood, you knew everybody, they wouldn't turn you in. Right? They wouldn't turn you in. Or if it was like a religious thing, then they would turn you in because it would be against God, right? But nowadays, people turn people in left and right because money's not good. They're hungry. The middle class can't afford things. And so let me tell you this. This is important. There's more millennials now working, okay, than the generation above them and the generation below them, which means the major workforce is now millennials. Millennials are bitter. They're bitter at the generation above them, but they're most bitter at basically boomers, because boomers began the process of removing the jobs that they could have had, should have had, would have had. I know a lot of you boomers had no idea what the hell was going on. I get it. I've spoken with so many of you, and you're just, the common thing I hear over and over is like, I didn't know. And I get it. People didn't really pay attention to politics back then. I get it. It's fine. It's whatever. But you got to understand, millennials are pissed. Millennials can't get a home. And the millennials that kind of lean left politically are constantly inundated with articles about how essentially it's better to rent than to own. It's almost never better to rent. Almost never. It's always better to own, because you're building equity. You know what I mean? When you rent, there ain't no equity. Now, sure, if you rent and like the AC unit goes and for some reason you signed a contract that said you had to pay for that, or some ridiculous out of this world contractual things that, I mean, most of the states have banned a lot of stuff because it was just out there. But let's say you lived in a state that wasn't very active and you had to pay for all this stuff that didn't make sense. Let's say you were in that situation, right? Okay, right, fine. It was better to rent than own. But otherwise, there's no world, even if you're not a hands-on person, there's no world where it makes sense where it was better for you to rent than own. And I guess one of the things that I didn't understand the full grasp of was why Charlie Kirk was so favored by younger generations. Because by my standard, he was teaching people about duty, about families, about having to work extra hours, having to work harder. I mean, all that shit sounds bad for young people because young people want to go travel and see the world and like go experience life when they still can. I'm sort of like aging out of that, like, territory of my life. In fact, and here's the thing, I get one vacation this year. It's in Maine. Today is Sunday, the second day of my actual vacation time. That's it. Today's it. Yesterday and today. Yesterday and today. And we're doing work even today. So the point that I'm getting at here is that it didn't mathematically make sense why people were so into him on its face. I'm starting to get it more now because the last thing a lot of people want, young women, young men who want to have a family, who want to have kids, who want to own a house, the last thing they want to do is be a perpetual victim having to scream, preference of anarchy, down with capitalism. They don't want that because you don't end up with anything at the end of that. You don't end up with a house at the end of that. You don't end up with money. You end up with charges against you. So I'm starting to understand where the nibbles were with that. And I didn't totally get it at first. I'm getting it more now. I'm getting it more now. I will say this. Don't ever let anybody tell you that the disabled aren't the victims. When you become disabled, what is the percent likelihood of you then being able to earn enough to put a down payment on a house if you don't already own one? If you haven't owned a house your entire life and you're retired, what is the likelihood on a retirement check that you will be able to buy a house? I don't mean those who get a VA check and a pension and a private pension, blah, 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 and all that stuff. I mean, you just get retirement benefits. Those are the real victims. Those are the actual victims. All right. Princess Diana, thank you for the $5 donation. I super appreciate it. Princess Diana has been with us for a very long time. She's royalty. She's very, very special. Also, just a quick shout out to Leanne. She's in here sometimes with that name, sometimes with a different name. Leanne has been with us for an extremely long time, back to when I was like 100 subscribers and basically I was doing videos in my Prius. And I still have that Prius. Like if any of you are like, man, he must be driving a Mercedes by now or a Rolls Royce or whatever. No, I drive a 2010 falling apart Prius that I just keep replacing parts on and a 2000 F350. That's basically, those are the cars that I drive. I do not spend money on cars because I'm just not at that income class that's able to purchase nice cars. I do not want another monthly payment. My student loans are more than the national average when it comes to disability benefits and retirement benefits. So to be fair with you, my entire life have been stuck in this slave mode to student loans. Just is what it is. With that said, Ray Riddle, thank you for the $20 donation. I super appreciate it. Love the little mirror thing with a little pair. Thanks for being you. Very cool. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that because it's been a ride. It's been a definite ride. And one of the things that I've learned, especially from the retired and the disabled, is that the choices you make while you're able to work, retired, they worked usually their whole life, then they become retired, or disabled people, some work for a while and then they become disabled, or some are congenital. They're disabled from the beginning. And I have a bunch of disabled people working with me right now that, are truly, truly disabled. They're in different types of medical devices where they're in like a chair where they can do basic typing and that's about it. But anyways, I guess what I'm saying is this, okay? Every day to me which is why I'm working on one of the 2 days I have off this year. Every day to me is a lesson learned in why I have to work so hard, because when I look at the disabled, when I look at the retired, their choices echo, right? The month after month, the year after year, they echo. And a lot of America is like a game. It's like a game where you roll the dice. You know what I mean? Like one of those casino games. I forget what they're called. It's not maybe roulette, or what's the one? I think it's called craps or something, where you throw the dice and it goes like way down this long thingy. It's got like a spinning thing, whatever. I don't bet, obviously. I don't do that stuff. I don't have money to bet. So, but the point is, life is a game where you get to kind of like do as much as you can to earn as much as you can. And then you reach a point where your body is fatigued. Sometimes that happens sooner for other people, right? Sometimes before retirement, you become disabled. That happens a lot in the blue collar arena, right? 55, 65-year-old plumbers and electricians are not happy. They're not happy unless they own the company. Craps, yes. Chain Fate, thank you. Craps. So, which is a terrible casino name, but whatever. Not that I know the background on it. So, the point is, Aaron Miles was like, dang, Esquire, what did you borrow? How much? Well, I had college, and then I had my master's, and then I had my doctorate, and then any certificate-y stuff I needed. So, basically like, $500,000. $500,000 is what it took to go ahead and educate me at the level that I took. If I could go back in time, I would have not gone this route. I would have gone and, basically worked and bought rental properties and just done that gig, and then restored rental properties. It makes significantly more than the law firm will ever, and it's just a safer, smarter way to do life. It just is. So, I see Cincinnati Fireball. Oh, howdy, madam. Good to see you. Very good picture there. Let me put a big heart there. $2 donation. Thanks, Walt. My mom died 8/27, and I'm losing everything. So there are certain protections that you can do. We'll do a video on that. Cincinnati Fireball, send me an email and I'll make a video on like how to protect assets that your parents had. What are the things that can occur to force you to sell them, things to watch out for, things to go ahead and make money off of them, stuff like that. One of the things that I would like to see be created for the disabled is a buffer where you could earn a certain amount per year, no matter what, so that those who could work a little could get a little more. Because, like, obviously, you're not going to get more from the SSA because their trust funds are running out. Like, that's boats sailed and sank, right? But I would like them to open it up where disabled can work and earn money and not have it count as much against them. And there already are rules for that, right? There's the trigger amount for the 9-month trial work period. There's the SGA amount. But I mean, like, money that just doesn't count across the board. That's bigger. Like the first 7,000, nobody looks. You know what I mean? And obviously, the trigger amount with the 9-month trial work period, that's something. But like, let's say first $7,000 you earn just doesn't count. Because at the end of the day, if disability benefits. Okay, so you know how they always make the argument, well, if you're going to go and get retired, you had your entire life up to that point to save for your future when you're retired. Right? That's the whole argument. And there's some truth to that. But with disabled people, there's zero truth to that. Because everybody expects to continue to be able to work. Right? Even if they know something's going on and they got like 5 more years to work, that's not enough. Because the money's not worth shit anymore. Like, people remember when people used to tell you to save? Yeah, right. Good luck. What, in modern day? It takes a man and a woman together to be able to rent an apartment. That's where we're at now. So it's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating because there could have been a world, hear me out. There could have been a world where the retirement age would go down and people would be able to retire at a younger age. And instead of this idea of having to work until you reach, and they just walked it back, right? Trump was hinting at it. Frank Bisignano walked it back, the commissioner of the SSA. They're like, maybe raise the retirement age to 69, maybe 70, right? If these politicians were so successful, the retirement age should have been lowered back down to 65. And just for a moment, and this is an important thing, so I hope you listen to this. Can you think of any other metrics that the country could use to define that the average American lived in a higher standard of living. Sure, how much they earn, right? But the problem with how much they earn is that when you keep devaluing the dollar, $100,000 isn't shit anymore. $100,000 used to be a lot of money. A millionaire, somebody who had $1 million, that used to be huge. The reason why America keeps failing is because only some people are able to succeed and beat the game of America. And when you beat the game of America, right, there's still a ton of people who will never get a chance to beat it, especially those who are disabled. So my point in all of this video is to explain to you how they're going to investigate you, how they're going to follow up with you, watch you, interview people related to you, etc. That way you have an understanding, a basic faculty, understanding, administrative understanding of what's going on, and then why you can't get that report. Because, it falls back to the three things, which is they want to keep people safe. They don't want you to know who actually told them stuff. They don't want you to know what their investigative techniques are, and they don't want you to basically interfere with the investigation as it's occurring. And that doesn't just mean the investigation they're doing this year, but it means further investigations down the line. If you realize that America is not trying to improve the standard of living for Americans, you kind of understand that America is basically a game of chutes and ladders, and the choices you make going down those chutes and ladders, like you're trying to roll the dice and get somewhere, you're either going to have success, less success, whatever it comes out to. I have represented so many people who used to be multi-millionaires. So many people. And the weirdest thing about it is that they lose a lot of money fast because they made poor choices with investments. One thing I would like to point out to you is if you have a nest egg, and you're having issues with anxiety, depression, bipolar, multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia, right? Schizoaffective disorder, PTSD, whatever, neurocognitive disorder. If you're having issues with those, go talk to 5 financial advisors. Don't trust what your nest egg could potentially do under what they're selling you online. Don't. Go talk to 5 financial investors. Pick 2 of them that hate each other. That's crucial. Totally crucial. It's to your benefit. And I don't want you to lose that confidence. Because think about this. One of the main things, we need to do more of a study on this, but one of the main things that's interesting about studying disabled people is that disabled people very often live in a state of anxiety or depression unless they have a big nest egg. $200,000 or more saved. If they don't have that, they're always living in a state of anxiety or depression. Because if they lose it, they lose their check or they lose whatever money they have, that's it. How are they going to earn more? That's it. There's no more, there's no moss, there's no extra. So our system is built on people being afraid to stay on Social Security disability benefits and wanting to get off them because of that fear and anxiety. That's just one of those tactics. It's a classic thing too. Like, they'll deny people at the initial filing and recon stages to have more and more of those people stop trying to go ahead and win benefits. It's a perfect, kind of defer, kind of push away people tactic. It is what it is. With that said, please remember to like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Don't be afraid to hit it. Also, please remember, at the end of the day, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays to answer questions for free. You get 5 to 7 minutes. Ask me any question you want. If you get a chance, one of the things I love, if you can go to Google and type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida, Disability Resolution's the law firm, throw some stars up there. I always super appreciate that. I love waking up to see those. Okay. Finally, if you need a 30-minute, hour-long consultation, one of those consultations where you ask me a tough question, or there's something you want to go over, like an overpayment, or you're about to go ahead and get out of your job and what benefits to set yourself up for, mini contract is below. I will catch you all. Tomorrow's Monday, so I'll be working at the law firm. Most of you clicked on subscribe to Disability Attorney in America. So from the 9 to 5 tomorrow, you know what I'm going to be doing. I'll catch you all later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. And please remember to be kind to each other because we are a community and we need to stick together. The next video I'm about to do, you're going to understand why. Okay. I'll be back in about 10 minutes. All right. Thank you so much. Attorney Walter Hnot, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.